Hello everyone and welcome to this video on the 20 most important previous year questions for DSC 18 Women's Writing. In this session, we'll go through some of the most frequently asked questions from past examinations. I won't be reading out the complete model answers because those will already be available on your screen. My goal is to help you understand what each question is really asking and what points you should focus on while writing your answers. Feel free to pause the video whenever you need more time to read the answer on screen. Let us begin. We start with Unit 1, which focuses on Alice Walker's The Color Purple. Before we discuss the questions, remember three major themes that repeatedly appear in examinations: womanism, the epistolary form, and the representation of violence. Question 1 is an identify and comment question. The speaker here is Shug Avery, and the passage captures one of the novel's most important ideas about spirituality. Shug rejects the traditional image of God as a distant patriarchal figure and instead imagines divinity as something present in the nature every day. This idea is directly connected to Celi's transformation. She moves away from believing in an indifferent white male God and develops a broader, more inclusive understanding of spirituality. This is an important example of the spiritual dimensions of womanism. Question 2 is a longer 20-mark question on violence in the novel. Walker is not simply showing acts of violence. She demonstrates how violence and silence work together. The novel begins with the command, "Tell nobody but God," which functions both as violence and censorship. Celi's body becomes something that others use and control. Characters such as Sophia and Squeak add different perspectives on oppression and resistance. At the same time, the novel offers possibilities of healing through characters like Shug, who help Celi discover pleasure, self-worth, and agency. Question 3 focuses on the epistolary form. This is not merely a stylistic choice. The letters are a political act. Celi writes to God because she has no safe human listener. The use of black vernacular language is deliberate and reflects her lived experience. Nettie's letters, written in more standard English, create an important contrast. The hidden letters discovered in Mr. Blank's trunk and become one of the novel's strongest symbols of patriarchal control. By the end of the novel, the address expands from "Dear God" to "Dear God, Dear Stars, Dear Trees," which reflects Celi's expanded understanding of the world and herself. Question 4 deals directly with womanism. Alice Walker introduced the term in 1983 to describe a black feminist philosophy that considers race, class, and gender together. Three ideas are especially important: racial specificity, community and solidarity, and a life-affirming spirituality. These themes appear throughout Celi's journey. Shug's theology and symbols such as the quilt. The quilt is particularly significant because it transforms scattered pieces into something beautiful, making it a perfect metaphor for womanism. Question 5 examines the relationship between Celi and Shug Avery. The relationship is both emotional and philosophical. Shug initially dismisses Celi, but gradually becomes her closest companion and greatest source of support. Celi's sexual awakening is closely connected to her spiritual awakening. Shug's discovery of Nettie's letters becomes an act of liberation. However, the novel does not end by celebrating a romantic couple. Instead, it emphasizes community, friendship, and female solidarity. Now let's move to Unit 2, where we encounter three different texts from different locations and historical periods. Despite their differences, all three explore women's confinement and their attempts to resist. Question 6 is an identification question from Charlotte Perkin Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper. The creeping woman that the narrator sees behind the wallpaper represents her own repressed self. The word creeping suggests hidden and restricted movement. John represents a double authority because he is both husband and doctor. It is also important to remember that the story has autobiographical dimensions. Gilman herself suffered under Dr. S. Weir Mitchell's famous rest cure, which greatly influences the story. Question 7 asks about the critique of the rest cure. Women were often diagnosed with hysteria and prescribed isolation and inactivity. John's authority as a physician prevents the narrator from expressing herself. Most importantly, she is forbidden from writing. Ironically, the text we read is her secret journal, making the very act of writing an act of resistance. The trapped woman behind the wallpaper mirrors the narrator's own psychological imprisonment. Question 8 focuses on the wallpaper as a symbol. Remember its development in three stages. At first, it is simply unpleasant and ugly. Then the narrator begins to see bars and a trapped female figure. Finally, she identifies completely with the woman and begins creeping herself. Tearing down the wallpapers becomes a symbolic destruction of her prison. John's collapse at the end reverses the power structure that existed throughout the story. Question 9 is about Rokeya Shekhawat Hosseini's Sultana's Dream, written in 1905 by Bengali Muslim women. The story imagines Ladyland, where men live in seclusion while women govern society. This is not merely a fantasy, it is a logical reversal of patriarchal arguments. If women are supposedly secluded for protection, then why not seclude the men who create danger? The scientific achievements of women in Ladyland demonstrate that women are fully capable of intellectual and social leadership. Question 10 asks for a deeper analysis of Ladyland. Rokeya was not only a writer but also an educator who founded a school for Muslim girls. Ladyland is not simply a utopia, it is a rational argument about the benefits of women's education. The text also challenges colonial assumptions about progress by imagining a society that is more advanced than contemporary colonial realities. Question 11 introduces Rasundari Devi's Amar Jiban. Published in 1876, it is considered one of the earliest autobiographies written by an Indian woman. Married at the age of 12, Rasundari repeatedly describes marriage through metaphors of captivity. Her strongest desire was to learn to read. Although she often frames this desire through religious language, her longing is fundamentally intellectual. The autobiography itself becomes the fulfillment of that dream. Question number 12 explores domestic labor and education in Amar Jiban. One of the most memorable images is the oil presser's bullock moving endlessly in circles. Rasundari uses this metaphor to describe her own repetitive life. Despite overwhelming household responsibilities, she secretly collected pages and taught herself to read. Her autobiography becomes a powerful critique of women's confinement. Question 13 is one of the most nuanced questions in the syllabus. Rasundari often describes marriage as bondage, yet she also expresses submission to God's will. This is not a contradiction, rather it reflects the complexity of a woman who lacked access to modern feminist language. Religion became both a framework of acceptance and a medium of resistance. Unit 3 focuses on poetry. Although the poets come from different traditions, they all explore women's identities, relationships, and struggles for self-expression. Question 40 deals with the concluding stanza of Sylvia Plath's Lady Lazarus. The references to God, Lucifer, and Nazi imagery symbolize patriarchal authority. The speaker transforms herself from victim into survivor and ultimately into a powerful figure who threatens male authority. However, the poem also raises important ethical debates regarding the use of Holocaust imagery. Question 15 focuses on Daddy, one of Plath's most controversial poems. The image of the black shoe represents containment and oppression. Plath uses fascist imagery as a metaphor for patriarchy and psychological domination. The final declaration, I am through, suggests a form of exorcism, though not necessarily complete healing. Question number 16 examines Emily Dickinson's I am wife, I finished that. The poem explores marriage as both achievement and limitation. Words such as sar create an appearance of power, while phrases like safer so reveal the compromises involved. The image of the eclipse suggests that marriage can quietly overshadow a woman's individuality. Question 17 focuses on Dickinson's deeply philosophical poem, I Cannot Live With You. The poem presents a series of impossible situations. The speaker cannot live, die, or attain heaven with her beloved without losing some essential parts of herself. The image of the door ajar symbolizes permanent uncertainty and emotional tension. Question 18 explores Eunice D'Souza's poetry. Unlike Sylvia Plath's dramatic style, D'Souza uses irony, restraint, and dark humor. In Advice to Women, the cat symbolizes independence and self-sufficiency. In Bequest, ordinary details reveal the limitation imposed on women's lives. Her refusal to perform expected emotions becomes a form of feminist resistance. Question 19 is a comparative question between The Color Purple and Amar Jiban. Seeley's silence is explicitly imposed through direct commands, while Rasundari's silence emerges from an entire social structure. Seeley finds her voice through relationships and community. Rasundari finds hers through autobiography. Despite these differences, both texts demonstrate that women's voices ultimately survive oppression. Question 20 offers short note options. You usually choose 2 out of the 4 topics. These include the epistolary form, the rest cure, Parda in Sultana's Dream, and confessional poetry in Sylvia Plath. Make sure you know the central concept, major features, and at least one textual example for each. Before we conclude, here is one final examination tip. Use the formula. Identify, contextualize, and analyze. This works for both short and long answers. Always include textual evidence, even if it is only one or two key quotations. In comparative questions, do not focus only on similarities, differences are equally important. These were the 20 most important questions for DSC 18. I hope this discussion helps you prepare more effectively for your examination. If you found this video useful, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Best of luck for your exam and we will see you in the next video.